Hey, welcome to my channel. My name is Ruby and I make sewing patterns. And today we're gonna be making my gathered mini skirt for woven fabrics design. I do already have a tutorial on my channel for a similar design, but with stretch fabrics. So if you want this design but don't want to sew a zipper, you can check out that one linked below. But for today's tutorial, there's a printed home pattern at the first link down below. It comes in sizes 0 to 18 and it's meant to be a mid-rise fit, but if you want it to be a high-rise fit, you can just size down. It is really short because that's how I like my skirts, but if you're not into like the mini micro vibe, I've included in this tutorial how to lengthen the pattern pieces as well. You can check out all my other patterns at the second link down below. Like and subscribe, please, and let's get into the tutorial. Print settings for this pattern should be scale 100% and double-sided off. You can use A4 or letter size paper to print. Just be sure to set the scale to 100%. This pattern is also compatible with Adobe Acrobat, and using Acrobat allows you to print only your desired size. To do this, open the file in Acrobat and select the layers option, then deselect all sizes except your own. If you're printing from Adobe Acrobat, I like to use the poster setting. Once you've printed the pattern, you'll cut out each piece of paper along the outside of their borders. Then you'll match up each piece one at a time according to the pattern layout in the info file. Then cut out each pattern piece in your desired size. If this design is too short for your liking, you can lengthen the pattern pieces before cutting your fabric. Let's say I wanted to add 5 inches to the skirt. To do this, you'll tape additional paper pieces to the hem of your front and back skirt pieces. First, you'll extend the sides and then use a ruler to measure 5 inches down from the original hem all the way across the bottom, marking it over and over again. Then connect the marks to create your new hem. From here, you'll just cut out the added length and use the piece as directed. You can also repeat this for the front and back lining pieces. Lay out your fabric right side facing up and identify the selvage and the cut edge. The selvage is the finished edge and the cut edge is frayed from where it was cut at the fabric store. Your pattern pieces must be placed with the grain line parallel to the selvage. Pin your first piece in place and cut it out. Now you'll snip all of the notches indicated on the piece. Be sure to select the correct notch for the size you've chosen where there are numbers indicating the sizing. I recommend you also use a disappearing fabric marker or a pencil or chalk so you don't lose your notches. This becomes really important when you're doing gathers as it's difficult to spot notches in the gathered fabric. If you're using a thinner fabric, I'd recommend you use fusible interfacing on the waistband pieces for structure. Use your pattern pieces again to cut out the waistband and facing pieces, but with fusible interfacing. Then you'll place them glue side of the interfacing to the wrong side of the corresponding piece and iron it in place. I do this for all 4 of my waistband and facing pieces. I also like to use a fabric marker or chalk to indicate the right sides and which piece is which. You need to cut out the front and back skirt pieces on a fold, so those fold grain line arrows should face the folded fabric edge. Then pin the rest of the piece in place and cut it out. Before unpinning, snip all of your notches. For the back piece, you're creating a double notch at that top at the fold line, while there's a single notch for the front piece. It's important you mark these notches with a marker or chalk or you'll lose track of them when gathering. Cut out your front and back lining pieces with your lining fabric and be sure to mark the right sides. The right side should have the 2 side seam zippers on the right hand side of the front lining piece and the left hand side of the back lining piece. Our first step is assembling the lining and facing. Take the front waistband facing piece and front skirt lining piece and place them together, right sides facing, so the bottom of the facing meets the top of the lining. Match up each notch along the top and pin the pieces together. Stitch the pieces together using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Now, you'll finish this seam by serging or using a zigzag stitch on your machine. Use your iron to press the seam allowance towards the lining and top stitch the seam allowance down to the lining using a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance from the seam. Serge or zigzag stitch both side seams of your new piece. Now repeat those steps for the back waistband facing and the back lining pieces. We're now going to prepare the skirt and the waistband. We're going to add gathering stitches to the top of the front skirt piece, one at 5/8 of an inch seam allowance and another at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. To start, take a small scrap piece of fabric, stitch into it a few times, lift the needle, lift the presser foot, and pull the fabric away, cut the threads, and leave 2 5-inch tails coming from the machine. Tuck those threads behind the presser foot. Set your stitch length to 4 to 5 millimeters. And with the right side facing up, begin stitching along the top of the front skirt piece. Do not backstitch. Just stitch all the way to the end with a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. When you reach the end, again, do not backstitch. Just lift the needle, lift the presser foot, and pull the fabric out, leaving 5 inches of thread hanging from the fabric and 5 inches coming out of the machine. Now repeat this again, but with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Ensure your threads are free from each other and not tangled in any way. Our next step is to gather the skirt. Place your front waistband piece above the skirt piece, right side facing you, and rotate it so it's upside down. Take the front skirt piece that you just added those gathering stitches to, and with the wrong side facing you, gently pull on the 2 bobbin threads to create gathers. Work slowly and evenly until the top of the skirt matches the width of the front waistband piece. Make sure to line up the notches. I forgot to mention this before, but you need to stop your gathers 1 inch before each side seam. So take your fabric marker or chalk and mark 1 inch from the side seam on either side of the waistband piece. Place the skirt along the bottom of the front waistband piece, right sides facing. Now adjust the gathers so that they match each notch and end the gathers where you place that 1 inch mark. The fabric after the 1 inch mark should lay flat. This is done so the side seams aren't bulky. Pin the gathers to the waistband securely at every notch. Now we'll attach the skirt to the waistband. Make sure you set your stitch length back to a regular length, like 2.5 millimeters, and stitch the gathered edge to the waistband using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Go very slowly. You can lift the presser foot when the needle is down and adjust the gathers as needed. Be sure to take your time. Once you've sewn that seam, remove the gathering stitches by pulling the threads you used to gather out. Finish this seam with a serger or zigzag stitch. Gently press the seam allowance towards the waistband with your iron. Then you'll finish both side seams of the skirt with your serger or zigzag. When doing this, be sure the seam allowance from the gathers is stitched towards the waistband on both sides. Repeat all of these steps for the back skirt piece and the back waistband piece. Now we'll prepare for the zipper. Take your front and back lining/facing pieces and place them right sides together. Pin these pieces together at the side seam where the zipper notches are. You're going to sew them together from the hem up, but stopping at the bottom zipper notch using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. When you reach the bottom zipper notch, back tack very securely and end the seam here. Press this seam open with your iron and set the lining and facing aside. To prepare the skirt and waistband pieces, lay the front skirt and waistband right side facing you, then place the back skirt and waistband on top of it, right sides facing together. Pin them together along the left-hand side seam. You're going to stitch them together here with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. From the hem up to the zipper notch, you'll use a regular stitch length, back tacking very securely at the notch. Then, after back tacking, you'll switch to a basting stitch, so a 4 to 5 millimeter stitch, and continue the seam up to the top of the waistband. Then, press this seam open with your iron. Now we're ready to install the zipper. Lay the skirt open, wrong sides facing up, and measure and mark a 1/2 inch down from the top of the waistband on the seam allowance. This is where the metal stops of your zipper will sit. Place the zipper face down onto the pressed seam allowance and pin it to just the seam allowances, not through the skirt itself. Fold the skirt out of the way so only one seam allowance is exposed. Again, this is just the seam allowance and the zipper here. You should have not pinned the zipper to the rest of the skirt. Switch your presser foot to a zipper foot and adjust the needle as needed. Switch your stitch length to a 4 to 5 millimeter base stitch and base the zipper to the seam allowance. Switch the fabric orientation and do the same on the other side of the zipper and seam allowance. Check that the metal tabs at the top of the zipper are perfectly even. If they're not, stop now and redo it, otherwise the waistband will sit crooked. Once that's secure, take your seam ripper and carefully open up the basting stitches that held the seam shut. Only remove those long basting stitches. Do not touch the strong stitches below the zipper notch. Remove those threads and now your zipper should open and close smoothly. Next, we'll attach the lining to the zipper. Open the zipper and fold the front skirt out of the way so you're looking at the back skirt and back waistband right side up. Place the back lining and facing right sides together with the skirt, sandwiching the zipper in between. Pin it in place here. Make sure you're using a regular stitch length again, and starting from the top, stitch through the lining, zipper, and skirt and waistband seam allowance as close to the zipper teeth as possible. Go slowly, and when you're near the metal stops at the beginning and end of the zipper, use your hand wheel to avoid breaking your needle. When you're about halfway down the zipper, you'll need to stop, make sure your needle is in the fabric, lift the presser foot, and reach in between the layers of the skirt and zip the zipper shut. Then continue the seam until the zipper notch. Repeat the same process for the other side of the zipper with the front pieces. Next, fold the seam allowances towards the lining and top stitch the lining to the zipper seam allowance. This keeps the lining flat and prevents it from getting caught in the zipper. Now we'll close up the skirt. Fold your front and back skirt pieces together, right sides facing, meeting the side seams, and stitch them together using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Press that seam open. Then fold your front and back lining pieces together, right sides facing, meeting the side seams, and stitch them together using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Then press the seam open. We're going to join the waistband to the facing by placing the waistband and facing pieces together, right sides facing. A lot of facing words there, sorry. At the point where they meet by the zipper, you'll take that zipper seam allowance and fold it around to the side of the facing. Pin it in place at both zipper ends, and pin the facing pieces to the waistband pieces at each of their notches and where the side seams meet. From the top of the zipper, stitch the facing and waistband together all the way around using a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Fold open the seam you just created and press the seam allowance towards the facing. Then you're going to top stitch the seam allowance to the facing 1/8 of an inch away from the seam. It's difficult to get in close where the ends of the seam meet, like where the zipper is, so just get as close as you can. I only get about like this close, like an inch or two away. I mean, like honestly 3 inches away from where the zipper is on either side. Now press the top of the waistband with your iron so that the waistband fabric rolls to the facing side slightly and the facing is not visible from the outside. Finally, for both the lining and the skirt, you're going to serge or zigzag stitch around the hems. Press the hems up a 1/2 inch and then stitch the hems in place. And with that, you're all done. Thanks so much for watching. I hope your skirt turned out perfect. If you have any questions, leave a comment down below and I'll be sure to answer, or message me on Etsy. All my other patterns are linked down below. Please like and subscribe. Please, 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 please.